everybody, it's Bailey and my fabulous partner in crime, Jeremy. So,
In Cozad, just before 10 on Saturday morning, 42-year-old Jeremy Koch, his wife Bailey, and their two teenage sons, Hudson and Asher, were found dead in their home, killed in what authorities say was a murder-suicide at the hands of Jeremy.
On May 10th, 2025, a high school graduation was scheduled in Cozad, Nebraska. Hudson Koch, 18 years old, was supposed to walk across that stage. His family had been counting down the days. Instead, at 9:45 that morning, deputies from the Dawson County Sheriff's Office arrived at the Koch family home near Johnson Lake, responding to a call from Bailey Koch's mother, Peggy. What she discovered inside would, in her own words, haunt her for the rest of her life. 4 people were found deceased: Bailey Koch, age 41, her husband Jeremy, age 42, and their 2 sons, Hudson, 18, and Asher, 16. All had been stabbed to death. A knife was recovered at the scene. Authorities determined that Jeremy had killed his wife and sons before taking his own life. But this wasn't a family that lived in silence. For over a decade, the Bailey and Jeremy Koch had been fighting Jeremy's severe depression, fighting the mental health system, and fighting to help others by sharing their story publicly. Their Facebook page, Anchoring Hope for Mental Health, had over 23,000 followers. We're going to walk through 10 of the most disturbing, heartbreaking facts about what happened to the Koch family. This isn't just a story about tragedy. It's about a system that failed, a family that tried everything, and the hidden battles that too many people face in silence. Before we begin, have you ever heard of this case? Drop a comment and let me know.
This story is one about mental health and the damaging effects it can have on entire families. It's a topic that Bailey Koch spent the years leading up to her death advocating for online.
Let's start with understanding who the Kochs really were. Jeremy and Bailey met as high school sweethearts. Jeremy graduated from Concordia University in Seward, Nebraska in 2005, where he ran track and cross country. The Bailey earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in education, eventually completing a doctorate in special education from Walden University in 2019. She taught special education at Holdrege Middle School. In 2007, they started Natural Escapes, a landscaping and greenhouse business in Cozad. The family grew plants, designed gardens, and Jeremy loved sharing his passion for nature with his 2 sons. Hudson, their oldest, developed a fascination with bonsai trees. By age 16, he was teaching classes at Natural Escapes. Asher, the youngest, was a varsity golfer as a freshman. They lived with Bailey's parents, Lane and Peggy Kugler, in a home overlooking a reservoir near Johnson Lake. They were active in their church. Jeremy put on elaborate fireworks shows every 4th of July. They were, as Bailey herself wrote, an as vanilla as it gets, a middle-class Nebraska family. But beneath that surface, Jeremy was fighting a war in his own mind. In 2009, Jeremy was diagnosed with severe depression. What followed was a 16-year battle that included at least 4 documented suicide attempts that should have killed him but didn't. The most devastating occurred on February 16th, 2012. Jeremy got into his Dodge Ram pickup, drove onto the highway, bowed his head in prayer, and deliberately steered head-on into a semi-truck hauling a combine. He hit the semi's wheel and spun into a second truck. The impact flattened the car seats in the back seat, the seats where his children normally sat. Emergency responders had to cut the truck open like a soup can to pull him out. Jeremy survived with a leg broken in 4 places, a punctured lung, a fractured pancreas, a complete colon reconstruction, and a brain bleed. Surgeons called it an absolute miracle. Jeremy called it a failure. Bailey wrote that when he woke up, he was destroyed that his attempt hadn't worked. For years, the Kochs kept this secret. People in their small community raised money for Jeremy's recovery, brought meals, sent flowers. They didn't know the truth. They thought it was an accident. But the hiding became unbearable. If you've ever kept a painful secret to protect someone you love, share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. In 2015, everything changed. Jeremy and Bailey made a decision that would define the rest of their lives. They went public. They created the Facebook page Anchoring Hope for Mental Health, Jeremy and Bailey Koch, and began documenting their journey. Bailey posted nearly every day, updates on Jeremy's treatments, the ups and downs, the fear, the hope. She answered hundreds of messages from people across the country and around the world who were going through similar struggles. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people followed their story. They wrote books together about mental health to help parents talk to their children about depression. Bailey became a sought-after speaker. Their transparency was rare and powerful. Lane Kugler, Bailey's father, later told reporters that he continues to hear from people who credit Bailey with saving their lives or the lives of loved ones. Her advocacy reached far beyond Cozad, Nebraska. But here's what's so disturbing. Despite all of this public advocacy, despite all of the awareness they raised, despite all of the love and support from their community, they couldn't save themselves. For 7 years after that 2012 crash, Jeremy was stable. He found the right combination of medications. He was, as his father-in-law said, absolutely dark thought-free for 7 years. The business was thriving, the boys were growing up, things seemed okay. Then, in July 2024, everything fell apart again. The medications stopped working. When July 2024 arrived, it brought more than just the failure of Jeremy's medications. It brought a natural disaster that would compound the family's crisis in ways they couldn't have anticipated. A massive hailstorm tore through Cozad. Hailstones the size of softballs rained down on natural escapes, devastating the greenhouses. Hudson, then 17, who later described arriving at the property, everything was destroyed. Leaves and branches were all over the ground. The inventory was decimated. The greenhouse coverings were shredded. The roof needed replacing. The siding was damaged. And here's where the nightmare deepened. The Kochs had recently switched to a high-deductible insurance plan to afford coverage. Insurance paid for vehicle damage and windows, nothing else. Every other repair came out of pocket. The family business, which Jeremy had run for 19 years, was struggling, and by August, Jeremy was mostly unable to work. Think about that. Your husband is battling suicidal depression. Your business, your livelihood, has just been destroyed by a natural disaster. Your insurance won't cover the repairs. And you're a special education teacher trying to hold everything together on a single income. Bailey would later write that they had drained both of their retirement accounts trying to keep the business afloat and pay for Jeremy's treatments. But the financial stress was just adding fuel to an already raging fire in Jeremy's mind.
Hi!
Hello!
Today's a special day.
Today's a 4-year anniversary of the day that I survived
Yay!
my head-on accident into a semi-truck on the interstate just east of Cozad here.
And you never know.
Nope.
Never know from looking at you. We have ups and downs. We have awesome experiences. We have not so awesome experiences. But God has taken everything that we have been through and He has used it for good.
Yep.
And even just this past experience with Jeremy going into Richard Young this last time, we ended up figuring out last night another good thing came from it. Somebody came to our support group who suffers from schizophrenia from...
I was able to relate to her, and her eyes just lit up as soon as I started telling her about the voices that I was hearing, and she
and we didn't
left with
understand
a
that
sense
before.
of hope. Yep, I had no clue before.
So again, it's not a coincidence that she came last night, and before that we wouldn't have totally understood that, but we understood it because of the medication failure and Jeremy having to be in the hospital this last time. So while it sounds like we've been through the ringer, we've been through a heck of a lot. We have.
It's all for good.
But it's all for good, and
it's
we're
not
actually
us, it's him.
It's Him, and we are thankful. We are very thankful for everything we've been through.
In March 2025, Bailey woke up to Jeremy standing over her bed, holding a knife. "Something is wrong." Those were the words Jeremy said to Bailey as he shook her awake in March 2025. He was standing over their bed with a knife, ready to end his life. Bailey was able to talk him down. She convinced him to go to Richard Young Hospital in Kearney, their safe place for mental health treatment. It was his 4th hospitalization there during their marriage. And he stayed for 4 nights and 5 days, while doctors tried to level out his medications and keep him safe. When traditional medications weren't working, the medical team suggested a more aggressive treatment: electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. Jeremy had already been denied ketamine infusions twice, so ECT seemed like the next option. Bailey called it a factory reset for Jeremy's brain, but it didn't work. Jeremy was scheduled for 17 ECT sessions. They stopped after only 8. Bailey wrote that the symptoms were becoming progressively worse. Jeremy became what she described as a shell of himself. He couldn't get out of bed unless forced. He wouldn't eat or drink unless Bailey made him. He couldn't take his medications or remember how to function. And Bailey wrote that he even had physical responses similar to PTSD whenever they drove past the hospital in Kearney afterward. On May 3rd, 2025, exactly 1 week before Hudson's graduation, Bailey brought Jeremy to the emergency room. He was diagnosed with severe dehydration and malnutrition. The medical notes read, "Mental health crisis, failure to thrive." Bailey wanted to take him back to Richard Young Hospital, but they were told there weren't enough beds available for a failure to thrive case. Those beds had to be reserved for people who were immediately, actively suicidal. Think about that for a moment. A man who has attempted suicide multiple times, who has just gone through failed ECT treatment, who is starving himself, he doesn't qualify as an emergency. If this is making you angry, drop a comment. And tell me what you think needs to change. On May 3rd, the same day Jeremy was diagnosed with failure to thrive, Bailey launched a GoFundMe campaign titled, "Jeremy's Battle Mental Health Support Needed." In it, she laid everything bare. "No pride left," she said. She described their 16-year journey through Jeremy's depression. She talked about the suicide attempts, the crash into the semi-truck, the 7 good years, and then the collapse that began in July 2024. She wrote about the hailstorm destroying their business. She wrote about draining their retirement accounts. She wrote about living on her teaching salary alone while trying to save her husband's life. And she asked for help. "By not eating or drinking, Jeremy is slowly completing suicide," she wrote. "I have taken out every penny we have to pay bills. My retirement is gone. And Jeremy's retirement is gone. I have begun the process of looking into selling our family business because the stress is too much on my husband and nothing is worth losing him." The community responded. Within days, the GoFundMe had raised over $20,000. People sent messages of support, they prayed, they donated, they shared the campaign. On May 8th, Bailey posted an update. Jeremy was home from the hospital, but he was not reacting well to a new medication he'd been on for only 3 nights. He was having suicidal thoughts again. He had cried tears of frustration and sadness. But Bailey made a decision. She wasn't going to bring Jeremy back to the mental hospital until after Hudson's graduation. She wrote, "Missing graduation might be more detrimental." The next day, May 9th, Bailey made her final post on the Anchoring Hope Facebook page at 12:25 p.m. The paperwork for a new treatment, transcranial magnetic stimulation, had been submitted. She and Jeremy had spent over an hour going through every aspect of their 16-year journey with the treatment team. "We feel heard, seen and supported," she wrote. "Please pray for insurance approval and that we can get started ASAP." 16 hours later, the Koch family was dead. May 10th, 2025 was supposed to be one of the best days of Hudson Koch's life. He was set to graduate from Cozad High School that afternoon. More than that, he had been accepted into a prestigious paid apprenticeship with Peter T. Bonsai in Auburn, California. It was a 5 to 7 year program that would have trained him to become a professional bonsai artist. E. Hudson had fallen in love with bonsai as a child, learning from his father. By 16, he was teaching bonsai classes at Natural Escapes. He had traveled with Jeremy to Nebraska Bonsai Association events in Omaha. His Instagram account showcased his growing collection and skill. He was described by those who knew him as talented, passionate, and driven. His younger brother, Asher, was thriving too. A freshman on the varsity golf team, he loved riding jet skis on the waterways near their home with his father. He was described as energetic and full of life. At approximately 9:45 a.m. on May 10th, Peggy Kugler went to her daughter's home to check on the family. What she found inside changed everything. Bailey, Jeremy, Hudson, and Asher were all found in their beds. All had fatal stab wounds. A knife was found at the scene. The preliminary investigation determined that Jeremy had killed his wife and sons before taking his own life. Lane Kugler later wrote, "What I saw will haunt me the rest of my life." That afternoon, Cozad High School held its graduation ceremony as planned. Superintendent Dan Endorf addressed the tragedy. "As you know, our community and our senior class experienced a tragedy within the past few hours. The bittersweet emotions felt by the senior class on their graduation day, and throughout this entire gymnasium for that matter, cannot be concealed." Hudson's empty seat was a silent reminder of what had been lost. In the hours and days after the discovery, Bailey's parents, Lane and Peggy Kugler, released a statement that stunned many people. They forgave Jeremy. "It was not Jeremy that committed this horrific act," they wrote. "It was a diseased mind. Mental illness killed them, not Jeremy." Lane Kugler told reporters directly, "I have forgiven my son-in-law for stabbing to death my only daughter. I hold no grudge for the killing of my 2 teenage grandsons." But his forgiveness did not extend to the mental health system. For that, he had nothing but contempt. "This country's mental health care is a disaster, a catastrophe, broken," the Kuglers wrote. "Far too many diseased minds have nowhere to go." They detailed the couple's years of desperate attempts to get help. They praised Bailey's tireless advocacy, saying she saved people's lives but couldn't save her own family. They called out the gaps in the system, the lack of hospital beds, the insurance companies that denied coverage, the treatments that weren't available or accessible. Lane Kugler sent letters to all 5 members of Nebraska's congressional delegation and Governor Jim Pillen, pushing for change. U.S. Senator Deb Fischer and U.S. Representative Adrian Smith responded with statements expressing condolences and calls for increased access to mental health treatment. But the Kuglers wanted more than words. They wanted systemic change. Think about this. The greatest danger period for someone with suicidal ideation is the 10 days after leaving a hospital. Jeremy was discharged on May 7th. He killed his family on May 10th, 3 days. As investigators pieced together what happened, one question kept emerging. How did it get to this point? Jeremy's mental health history dated back to at least 2009, but his sister, Jackie Hendrickson, believes the serious issues began even earlier. So after that near-fatal crash in 2012, Jeremy suffered from internal injuries that lingered for the rest of his life. In December 2024, just months before the tragedy, a small bowel obstruction forced him to be hospitalized for a couple of days right before Christmas. Even his attempts to help himself backfired. A former cross-country and track runner, Jeremy tried to get back into running and exercise to combat his mental health issues. It led to shin splints and stress fractures. His sister later said, in more ways than one, his body just wasn't cooperating with the things he was trying to do to help himself. But the real turning point came in August 2024. The medications that had worked for 7 years suddenly stopped working. Combined with the financial and emotional stress from the hailstorm damage, Jeremy began to deteriorate rapidly. Bailey noticed behavioral changes. Jeremy became deceitful. He became financially irresponsible, leading Bailey to take away his credit cards. He often couldn't get out of bed. Hendrickson said the August 2024 hailstorm added strain to Jeremy's mental state that he couldn't recover from. Dr. Kimberly Clausen, an assistant professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center and program director for the university's Forensic Psychiatry Fellowship, explained that while ECT has strong evidence supporting its use for severe depression, there can be side effects that require treatment to be halted. In Jeremy's case, those side effects were catastrophic. Here's the question we have to ask. If a treatment is making someone worse, if they're starving themselves to death, and if they've been fighting this battle for 16 years, where do they go? If you think the mental health system needs reform, hit that subscribe button. This is a story that needs to be heard. One of the most disturbing aspects of this case is that Bailey was fighting publicly, desperately, right up until the end, and the system still couldn't save them. Bailey's Facebook page documented everything. In the days before May 10th, she was actively seeking new treatments. She was filling out paperwork. She was hopeful about transcranial magnetic stimulation. She was communicating with treatment teams who told her they felt heard, seen, and supported. But hope doesn't pay for treatment. Insurance approval was still pending, and time was running out. The community gathered after the tragedy. A Central Plains Home Health and Hospice held a grief counselling session in Cozad. Multiple pastors, counsellors and social workers attended. Robert Dyer, CEO of Cozad Community Hospital, noted that many individuals were helped by Bailey's social media posts, but he also cautioned that online advocacy should never replace professional help from trained mental health professionals. Yet that's the paradox. Bailey and Jeremy were getting professional help. They had been for 16 years. They'd tried multiple medications, therapy, hospitalizations, ECT, and were seeking approval for TMS. They had medical teams, they had insurance, they had a supportive community, and it still wasn't enough. A celebration of life service for all 4 members of the Koch family was held on May 22, 2025, at Parkview Baptist Church in Lexington. As overflow seating was needed, the service was live-streamed, thousands mourned. The family established a memorial fund at Waypoint Bank in Cozad. The GoFundMe campaign, which had been intended to save Jeremy's life, ended with over $21,000 raised, money that would now go to covering funeral expenses and supporting the extended family. Bailey's father continues to hear from people around the world who say Bailey saved their lives through her advocacy. Her Facebook page remains active, filled with tributes and messages from people whose lives she touched. But Bailey, Jeremy, Hudson, and Asher are gone. Here's the final, most disturbing truth about the Koch family tragedy. It was preventable. Not in a simple way, not with one phone call or one different decision, but systematically, structurally preventable. Ida Kuglers put it bluntly. This country's mental health care is a disaster. Dr. Dave Mears, founder of the Nebraska Suicide Prevention Coalition and Senior Director of Behavioral Health Services at Bryan Medical Center in Lincoln, notes that rural suicide rates in Nebraska continue to accelerate past those in cities. Access to therapists is limited. Hospital beds for mental health crises are scarce. Stigma prevents people from seeking help. Quinn Lewandowski, who develops behavioral health strategies through the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center, explains that in small towns, everyone can spot your car outside the therapist's office. Men especially worry that asking for help makes them look weak in places that prize self-sufficiency. But the Koch family broke through that stigma. They shared their story publicly. And they asked for help repeatedly. They tried every available treatment, and the system still failed them. Jeremy's mental illness manifested first around 2009. It took until 2015 for the family to start sharing their story publicly. It took until 2024 for the medications to fail, and by May 2025, it was too late. The question isn't why Jeremy did what he did. Mental illness doesn't follow logic. Jeremy's father-in-law is right. It wasn't Jeremy who killed his family, it was the disease. The question is, why didn't the system work? Why were there no beds available for a failure to thrive case? Why was ECT continued even as it made Jeremy worse? Why couldn't insurance approve treatments faster? Why does it take a tragedy like this for anyone to pay attention? Lane and Peggy Kugler said in their statement, "We can make a difference." If Bailey believed that with all her heart, we can help our fellow human beings. Don't give up. Bailey didn't, right up to her last breath. This case should make us angry. It should make us demand better. Better access to care, better training for providers, better insurance coverage, better hospital capacity, better follow-up after discharge. Bailey spent years advocating for mental health awareness. She documented their journey not for attention, but to help others feel less alone. She answered hundreds of messages from strangers who were struggling. The least we can do is learn from their tragedy and fight for the changes that might have saved them. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, please call 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You deserve help. You deserve to be here. And if this video moved you, and share it. Share it with your legislators. Share it with your insurance company. Share it with anyone who has the power to change this broken system. The Koch family's story didn't have to end this way. Let's make sure the next family's story has a different ending.
All right, Mom made vegan fajitas.
Yes, tofu is vegan.
Tofu is vegan. What do you think? Son number one?
They're actually good.
Okay. Son's friend number one? Okay. Son number two? So, this isn't terrible lifestyle.
No.
So far.
Yeah. I'd actually kind of recommend vegan. Not completely, but you know.
If you know how to cook, it's really good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I'm impressed.
Bailey Koch once wrote, "We can help our children turn this into something beautiful and a way to help people." Hudson never got to complete his bonsai apprenticeship. Asher never got to finish high school. Bailey never got to see the change she fought for. Jeremy never got to be free of the disease that tormented him. But their story can still help people. It can still change things. It can still save lives. Don't let their deaths be in vain.